Have you ever experienced something so forbidden that even breathing near the person felt like a crime? I have. And no matter how much time has passed, no matter how hard I try to move on, there's a moment that insists on haunting me. A kiss. A single kiss. One that shouldn't have happened. That couldn't have happened. But it burned my skin as if it were the most right and inevitable thing in the world. She was my sister's girlfriend. Yes, my own sister's. And even if that sounds horrible, even if you're judging me right now, I need to tell you this story, because I've never been able to forget. And maybe, deep down, you also have something you've never managed to completely bury. I remember the first time I saw Julia perfectly. It was a humid summer morning, the kind where you sweat just by existing. I was sitting on my mom's porch, drinking passion fruit juice she had made herself. And then, my sister arrived with her. "This is Julia," she said, with a light in her eyes I had never seen before. Julia smiled, and right there, in that smile, something inside me shifted. She was different, not just beautiful. With her honey-colored eyes and hair pulled back in a messy bun, there was a restless energy about her, a presence that seemed to fill the air around her. I felt strange. I tried to ignore it. She was just another one of my sister's girlfriends, right? They always came and went. But Julia didn't seem like she was just passing through. We started seeing each other more. Family lunches, afternoon coffees, weekends at the beach. And slowly, she went from being in the category of someone I avoid looking at to someone I can't stop watching. I hated it. I blamed myself. I pulled away. But she made a point of starting conversations, of listening to me when I talked, of laughing at my dumbest jokes. We started to build small, silent connections. Glances that lasted a second too long, accidental touches that sent a shiver down my spine. And I began to realize it wasn't just in my head. There was something there, something quiet, hidden, but pulsating. I tried to convince myself it was just loneliness, that I was confusing things. Until the day everything changed. It was my sister's birthday. The house was packed. Loud music, people dancing, glasses of wine everywhere. I went to the kitchen to find a quieter spot, and Julia showed up minutes later. She said she also needed to breathe. We stood there, leaning against the counter in silence. The muffled sound of the party came from a distance. She looked at me, and in that look, so much was said without words. "Do you feel it too?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She didn't answer. She just moved closer and kissed me. A slow, deep, forbidden kiss. It burned like fire and froze time all at once. I pulled away immediately. I said that couldn't happen. She nodded, her eyes welling up, and then she left. She went back to the party as if nothing had happened, and I was left there, my heart pounding, the taste of her on my lips, and a lump in my throat that felt like it would never go away. After that, nothing was the same. Julia continued dating my sister for a few more months, but she avoided my gaze. She avoided being alone with me, and I distanced myself. I stopped going to family gatherings. I made up excuses. I tried to protect myself, but every time I caught a glimpse of her, my chest tightened. Because as wrong as it was, as much as I knew it could never happen, I felt it. I felt it so much. I felt everything. Until one day, my sister came home crying. Julia had broken up with her. She said she wasn't ready for a relationship, that she needed time. And my sister was devastated. Inside, I was a wreck. Part of me wanted to run after Julia, to ask if she had ended it because of me. Part of me wanted to comfort my sister. Part of me wanted to disappear from the world. And this is where I'll pause this part of the story and look at you, who's listening to me now. Have you ever gone through something like this? Have you ever loved someone you couldn't have? Have you ever felt like your heart wanted to scream, but your mouth couldn't say a word? Tell me in the comments, because maybe, just maybe, your story is also trapped in a kiss that never should have existed. After the two of them broke up, things became strangely quiet. My sister would cry in corners, write long texts on her phone, and then delete everything. She alternated between anger and sadness. And I tried not to show the turmoil I was experiencing inside. Every one of her tears felt like a stab in my chest, not just from seeing my sister suffer, but because, deep down, I knew there was a small chance I was part of that pain, and I couldn't tell anyone. It was a secret too heavy to carry. One kiss, a kiss that wouldn't leave my skin, a kiss that turned into a scar and an obsession all at once. I would spend hours remembering Julia's eyes, the way she looked at me before she kissed me. It wasn't an impulse. It wasn't a mistake. It was real. It was a feeling. But the truth isn't always fair, and I couldn't chase my truth without destroying my sisters. So I stayed silent. I continued being the good daughter, the supportive sister, even when my soul was screaming inside. I started writing in a hidden notebook, pages and pages pouring out everything I couldn't say out loud. Dreamed of her again today. Heard her name on the radio and my heart skipped a beat. Almost called today, but I didn't have the courage. The months went by. Julia disappeared, vanished from social media, from mutual gatherings. My sister started to get better, slowly. She met a new girl, more reserved, sweeter, and I thought that maybe things could finally go back to normal. But it was just an illusion, because love, when it's real, doesn't ask for permission to come back. It just storms in again, and it came back. It was on a cloudy Sunday morning. I was with a friend at a small cafe near the university. We were drinking tea and laughing about silly things when I heard a voice behind me. A voice I hadn't heard in months, but one that lived in my memory like the soundtrack to my daily life. It was her, Julia. She was right there, behind me, ordering a cappuccino with the same soft yet determined voice. I turned around slowly. She saw me, and she froze. We stared at each other for a few seconds, as if the world had hit pause, and then she smiled. A shy, almost guilty smile. I smiled back, my heart racing, and in that second, I knew nothing had changed. Minutes later, she came to our table. She said hello to my friend who had no idea about the emotional hurricane between us. She asked how I was, how things were going. The conversation was brief, but the eyes said everything. Before leaving, she handed me a small folded piece of paper, like we were in high school. "If you want to talk," was all she said, and then she was gone. I held that piece of paper like it was dynamite. My fingers were trembling. Inside, there was a number. Her number. The first thing I thought was, why now? But that was quickly followed by, why not now? I spent hours staring at that number. I even typed out a message a few times. Deleted it, wrote it again, deleted it. Until, at the end of the day, I worked up the courage and just sent, "Hi." The reply came 2 minutes later. "Do you still like hibiscus tea with lemon?" My heart nearly leapt out of my chest. We arranged to meet the next day at the same cafe. When we met again, it was as if time had come full circle just to bring us back to that point. We sat across from each other, silent for a few seconds, as if we didn't know where to begin. And then she spoke. That kiss, it wasn't a mistake for me. It was the most real thing I had felt in a long time, and I disappeared because I was scared of what it meant. Scared of you, of your sister, of myself. But I never forgot. I took a deep breath. I said I hadn't forgotten either, that I tried but I couldn't. And then, for the first time in a long time, I cried. I cried right there, in the middle of the cafe, in front of everyone. She held my hand, tightly. And I knew there was still something there. But the problem was that now everything was even more complicated. My sister had moved on, yes, but I didn't know how she would react to finding out that her ex-girlfriend was sitting with me in a cafe, holding my hand and saying she never forgot what she felt. There was a part of me that wanted to scream it to the world, to walk out of there with Julia and never let go. But there was another part that still carried guilt, fear, shame. And that night, lying in my bed, staring at the dark ceiling of my room, I asked myself, does love justify everything? Is it worth living a story knowing it was born from such delicate ground? If you've ever been through something like this, if you've ever found yourself torn between what you feel and what's right, I'd really love to hear from you. Tell me what it was like in the comments, because maybe your experience can help not only me, but also other people who are living through the same conflict. And if you're still here with me, feeling this weight in your chest along with me, go ahead and like this video. It shows that you want to hear the rest of this story, because, believe me, there's still so much more to come. That week, Julia and I saw each other 3 more times. Each meeting was an emotional whirlwind. We laughed, we cried, we remembered everything while at the same time trying to pretend we were starting from scratch. But the past followed us like a shadow that refuses to disappear. And even in the lightest moments, like when she told me about the trips she wanted to take, or when she took my hand in the middle of the street, there was still a tension in the air, as if at any moment something could crumble. I knew I couldn't hide this forever. I had to tell my sister. But just imagining her reaction made my throat close up. After all, she was still my sister, my best friend for years, the person who watched me grow up, who defended me in school fights, who cried with me through my first breakup. How could I tell her I was getting involved with someone she had loved? I decided I needed to talk to Julia about it. We sat on a park bench, where the sound of the leaves helped to calm my heart. I spoke with all the vulnerability I could muster. We need to decide if it's worth facing all of this, because if I'm open about us, there's no going back. She was silent for a while, looking at the lake, as if searching for answers in the water's reflection. And then she said, "I don't want to lose you again, but I also don't want you to lose yourself, trying to love me in secret." Those words hit me hard, because that was it. I was hiding, not just from my sister, but from myself, pretending I could control what I felt, when in reality, the feeling had already taken over everything. That same day, I decided I needed to talk to my sister. I arranged to meet her at a small restaurant where we used to have lunch together when we still lived in the same city. My heart was beating out of sync, as if it knew this conversation could change everything between us. When she arrived, smiling, my stomach turned. She seemed so calm, so happy, and there I was, about to reopen a wound. We started by talking about light things, work, family, small talk, and then, between a sip of juice and a bite of pasta, I let it out. I saw Julia. She froze. Her expression changed instantly. "When?" she asked, her voice low. I took a deep breath. "Last week. We ran into each other at a cafe, we talked, and then we saw each other again." The silence that followed was deafening. She put down her fork. She stared at me. "Are you seeing her?" I couldn't answer right away. I just nodded, and I saw in her eyes the light go out. It was like watching a door close from the inside. "You knew how much she hurt me, and still," her voice broke, and that hurt more than any scream. I tried to explain that none of it was planned, that it all happened without my control, that the feeling had been there from the beginning, but that I fought against it. She looked at me like I was a stranger. "You could have told me sooner. You should have trusted me. I'm your sister." I cried. I couldn't help it, because she was right. I should have. But how do you tell someone something that you couldn't even understand yourself until recently? That lunch ended with a cold hug and a painful distance between us. She left saying she needed time, and I respected that. But I stayed there, my body in the restaurant and my soul in pieces. I went home and told Julia everything. She held me for a long time and said she had expected it. Now we need to give her space. If it's meant to be, it will be, but with honesty. And from that point on, we started building something different, something based no longer on secrets and silences, but on conscious choices. We started going out as a couple, visiting new places without hiding. And slowly I began to understand that love is also made of courage. The courage to own who you are. The courage to look the person you love in the eye and say, "I'm here with everything that I am." But the pain with my sister still ate at me. I would send texts, ask how she was, but the replies were short, monosyllabic. She was still hurt, and I understood, but it hurt because I loved her, and I didn't want to lose her. One day, I sent one last message. "I know you're still hurting, and anything I say now might sound like an excuse, but I just wanted you to know that it wasn't a betrayal. It was love, and I still love you, as a sister, as a friend, as everything." She read it and didn't reply. And now that you've heard another part of this story, tell me, what would you have done in my place? Have you been through something similar? Let me know in the comments, because maybe in this space right here, we can understand each other a little more. And if this story is affecting you, subscribe to the channel now. There's still a lot more to come, and I want you to be here to hear it all. Time passed, And like everything that is alive, the pain also transformed. My sister still kept her distance, but it was no longer that silence filled with anger. It was a more tired, more resigned silence. Sometimes she would react to my stories, like a photo of mine with some inspirational quote, as if she were slowly trying to remember that, before any hurt, we were sisters. But even so, there was something between us that seemed irreversible. A chasm built by a feeling that neither of us asked to exist. Julia and I, on the other hand, were growing stronger. We agreed from the beginning that we didn't want to rush. We didn't want our relationship to be a slap in the face to anyone. We wanted to live calmly, honestly, truthfully. We went out to new places, discovered music, exchanged letters like two teenagers falling in love for the first time. And as much as guilt still showed signs of life sometimes, it was impossible not to see how much it all made sense. When she looked at me, I felt like I belonged, that I was safe, that I was loved completely, without effort. But the peace we built was put to the test one night when my mother decided to gather the family for dinner. It was her birthday, and since it had been months since we were all together, she insisted that no one miss it. I hesitated. I spent days wondering if I should go, but in the end, I thought it would be worse to refuse. I called my sister beforehand. I asked if it was okay for me to be there. She said, of course, but with no emotion. Still, I went, and I brought Julia with me. On the way there, my palms were sweating. My heart felt like it was running a marathon. Julia squeezed my fingers firmly. We'll go with respect and with an open heart. Whatever is meant to happen will happen. We arrived at my mom's house, and right at the entrance, I felt the impact. My aunts, uncles, cousins, they all welcomed us warmly. But when I saw my sister, my stomach dropped. She was beautiful, as always, but her gaze was cold. Overly polite, the kind of politeness you use when you're trying not to explode. We sat at the table. Conversations, laughter, memories, but there was a tension hanging in the air, as if everyone there could feel that there was something unresolved between two very close people. And there was. In the middle of dinner, my sister got up. She went to the kitchen. Julia looked at me and nodded. Go, talk to her. It will hurt more if you don't. I got up and went. I found my sister washing dishes alone, even though the sink was almost empty. It was an excuse to escape. I approached slowly. Can I help you? She didn't answer. I continued. I didn't come here to provoke you. I came because I still love you, because I miss you, because you are missed. She took a deep breath. She put down the plate she was holding and turned around. And then, with tears in her eyes, she said, You hurt me in a way no one ever has, because you were the only person I thought would never do that to me. I cried. Again. I know, and it hurts me. It hurts me as much as it hurt you. But I didn't choose to fall in love with her, and I swear, I tried to fight it. She shook her head. I know you tried, and maybe one day I'll be able to understand. But right now, it still hurts. We hugged, a painful, tear-soaked, confusing hug, but a hug. For the first time since everything happened, she touched me with affection. And that was enough to make me believe that maybe, with time, things could get better. We went back to the table. The atmosphere was still strange, but less tense. Julia looked at me with tenderness, as if to say, You were brave. And I smiled back, grateful not to be facing everything alone. That night, lying next to Julia, with the sound of rain hitting the roof, I realized that true love isn't the kind that comes easy. It's the kind that survives the chaos. The kind that withstands judgment, guilt, silence. It's the kind that, even when wounded, chooses to keep going. If you've made it this far with me, tell me, do you believe in new beginnings? Have you ever had one? Let me know in the comments. Sometimes, a simple story from you can light the way for someone going through something similar. After that night, a lot changed. Not immediately, like in romantic movies where everything is solved with one conversation or a hug. Real life doesn't work like that. Real life is made of attempts, stumbles, good days, and days when we have to relearn how to breathe. But what happened there, at that dinner, was the beginning of a slow process of rebuilding. My sister and I started texting more frequently. Small conversations, some even uncomfortable, but always truthful. And over time, we started meeting up again, even if there were still scars between us. Julia was always patient with it. She never demanded anything, never pushed. She knew how important it was for me to salvage the bond with my sister, and I knew it was thanks to that patience that our love grew stronger every day. We created a new way of loving, more conscious, more delicate, more present, without needing to hide, without needing to pretend. And it was in this new space that I truly understood what it was to love someone without fear. One day, months later, my sister asked me to get coffee. It was a cold afternoon with a gray sky, typical of autumn. We sat across from each other, just like we did when we were teenagers, sharing silly secrets. She looked me in the eyes and said, "I'm still learning to deal with it, but I see how good she is for you, and I want to see you happy." That completely disarmed me. I didn't expect it. Not like that. Not with so much generosity. I cried. She cried. And it was in that moment that I knew we would never be the same as before. But maybe now we would be something even stronger. Two women who love each other, despite all the flaws, learning to forgive and move on. Over time, we started including Julia in some family gatherings. At first, it was all a bit awkward, but slowly, people began to see that it was real, that it wasn't a whim or a mistake. It was love, the rare kind, the kind that survives the impossible. We started planning trips together, dreaming of a house with a garden, a dog, and many lazy Sunday breakfasts. The life I thought I would never have was happening. But if you think everything ended like a fairy tale, not exactly. Life is never a predictable script. We don't always end up with everything resolved, and that's exactly what happened. One day, Julia received a job offer in another country. Something big, a project she had always dreamed of. And when she told me, I saw in the sparkle of her eyes the same light I saw when I first met her. I smiled, because I loved seeing her happy. But inside, I fell apart. We talked for hours. She asked me what I thought. And as much as my heart screamed for her to stay, I said, "You have to go. You have to live this." She held my hand and said, "But I want you with me." And right there, I had to face a new truth. I still wasn't ready to leave everything behind. My sister, my family, my own rebuilding. My place was still here, and hers now was somewhere else. It was the hardest decision of my life. We loved each other, and yet we said goodbye. Julia left a month later. We cried at the airport like two teenagers who had promised eternal love at the departure gate. And maybe that's what it was. An eternal love, but not one bound by time. A love that existed, that was lived, that was real, even if it didn't last forever by our side. Today, I'm telling this story because I know there are a lot of people out there living through impossible loves, confusing stories, kisses that never should have happened but still burn inside. And I want to tell you, it's okay. Sometimes, the most intense stories aren't meant to last, but they are meant to teach, to transform, to reveal who we truly are. And you know what else? I don't regret it. Not for a second. Because even with all the pain, all the guilt, all the conflict, I experienced something that made me feel alive. And no one can take that away from me. If this story touched you in any way, tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video with them. You might be helping more than you imagine. And to keep following real, intense stories with true feelings, subscribe to the channel now. It shows me that this space is yours too, that we can continue on together, discovering what else love has to teach us.